What happened? क्या हुआ? ठीक है. So what was the last topic we have covered? HbA1, HbA2. Okay, चलो. एम्ब्रियोजेनिक डेवलपमेंट में लिख लिया ना हमने, एम्ब्रियोनिक एंड फीटल फॉर्म ऑफ हायर एफिनिटी वाला लिख लिया ना. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो, एचबी में कंटिन्यू. एम्ब्रियोनिक पॉइंट हमने लिखा ना, एम्ब्रियोनिक डेवलपमेंट. चलो आज एक टेस्ट लेने का सोच रही हूँ मैं. राइट डाउन ईच यूनिट ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन, each unit of hemoglobin contains 4 unit of heme, contains 4 unit of hemes. अच्छा give me 1 minute, मैं वो डायग्राम वाला पीडीएफ अपलोड कर दूं ना, just a minute. कौन सा टॉपिक दूंगा आज टेस्ट में? हाँ कोई नहीं. Each unit of hemoglobin contains, मिल ही रहा है पीडीएफ. Each unit of hemoglobin contains 4 unit of heme, 4 unit of heme that are united together, that are united together by alpha and beta chain of globin, by alpha and beta chain of globin, full stop. Each unit of heme, each unit of heme can combine with one molecule of oxygen, can combine with one molecule of oxygen. Therefore, one molecule of hemoglobin, therefore, one molecule of hemoglobin carry 4 molecules of oxygen, carry 4 molecules of oxygen, and each RBC and each RBC carry around 280 millions 280 millions of hemoglobin molecules of hemoglobin molecules. Next point, recycling of RBC. Next, make the heading recycling of RBC. At the end of erythrocyte lifespan, at the end of erythrocyte lifespan, their constituents are broken down. Their constituents are broken down, comma, into the heme and globin, and reused to form the erythrocytes, and reused to form the erythrocytes. Next point, as Fe plus 2, as Fe plus 2 ferricine released from the heme, it is carried away by the transferrin protein. It is carried away by transferrin protein into the blood and the various tissues Bracket में लिखो bone marrow and liver. Read on bone marrow and liver. Next, porphyrin releases from heme is converted into yellow pigment called bilirubin. Have you heard about this word bilirubin and biliverdin? No? Bilirubin. सुना है?
Bile salts.
Yes. Bracket में लिखो the insoluble form of hemoglobin taken by the liver cells, comma, change the insoluble form, comma, bracket, sorry, comma, taken by the liver cells, comma, changed into the soluble form, and then excreted into the bile. So where is the bile pigment? Bile pigment releases from liver. बोलना है श्रीराम. Bile pigment is released with the liver and stored in the gallbladder. अच्छा. What is the function of the bile pigment? Digestion of lipids, right? Actually, not exactly the digestion, but the emulsification of fats. That is called lacteal formation. What is the emulsification of fat?
Micelle formation.
Yes, exactly. Leads to the micelle formation. What is micelle formation?
It is a circular, means the lipid molecules are broken into their amphipathic structures and they are arranged in a circular forms.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. So in simple, if you want to try to understand, कभी mustard oil को कभी water में forcefully dissolve करने की कोशिश करो, right? Suppose that you have put a little bit drop of the mustard oil in the water. So what will happen? It will just broke down a छोटू सा part into the water. That is kind of missile formation. Actually, this missile formation, what is missile formation? Although we have to cover in the digestion chapter again, then I'll not tell you. Okay? अच्छा. So किसी भी type, any kind of cell, even the RBC itself, ठीक है? इसकी जो plasma membrane है, the plasma membrane of any kind of cell, either the RBC, skin cell, stomach cell, any kind of that, ठीक है? So what is this part? This is your lipid part, right? Exactly, the phospholipid part. So what is in that? So here are the hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tail. मतलब this is avoiding the water, है ना? यहाँ पे there is no water. So anything, suppose that I have eaten any kind of vegetarian food, suppose that I have eaten any kind of veg food. So that suppose that I have eaten the spinach. So spinach is also the made up of the multiple type of cell, right? Or any kind of in which the actually lipid content cell or any kind of cell. So what will happen? So as soon as it will enter into the intestine, the liver is secreting the bile pigment that is collected or stored in the gallbladder. So जब आप इस particular किसी भी type को, either the animal or the plant, when you try to break it down, so ये यहाँ से break होगी, right? It will break down into here. So in your complete body, there's a complete water. In every part of your organ, there's a complete water. Okay. So it will lead to the breakdown like this. ऐसे. But what we know, the tail is your hydrophobic. So, but यहाँ पे तो as soon as it will break down, what will happen? It will interact with the water. While it doesn't want to interact with the water. So what will happen? So it will form this structure. Okay, if you are not allowing me to form, I'll form this structure. समझ आ गया? Getting my point? This hydrophobic tail will not face the water content. If you are forcefully trying to face it by breaking with the liver or the bile thing, it will try to again form that in itself a rounded like a structure. That is called the missile formation. This is a missile. Okay? And this process is called the emulsification of fat. ठीक है? अच्छा, ये तो bile का काम हो गया. So one thing we have heard about that bile, the bile pigment contains the bilirubin and biliverdin. They are the two pigments which are known as a bile pigment. What are their roles? Anyone? What is the roles of the biliverdin and bilirubin and biliverdin? So we get it. They are coming. अच्छा. So when you try to dissolve the water when you try to dissolve the blood in the water, will it dissolve completely? Suppose that यहाँ पे बहुत सारा amount में blood है. Suppose that will it go in a one wash? No. Blood also have that lipid content. कुछ नहीं है तो RBC की cell में तो lipid content है ही है, right? अच्छा. So what happened? The lipid content of the blood is consisting that bilirubin and biliverdin part. So until the stomach part, everyone, the stool का color होता है, that is slightly yellowish, that because of the bile pigment. समझ आ गया? So what liver is secreting? If the liver is not proper functioning, अच्छा, आप कोई भी medicine खाते हो, you are taking any kind of medicine, the urine or the stool color changes, right? Because ultimately every kind of medicines and everything is going to be worked with respect to the liver, ठीक है? और liver आपका क्या secrete कर रहा है? Bile. Bile has a bile. What is a bile? Bile is a kind of chemical compound which has the bile juices plus the bile pigment. Bile juices is involved in the emulsification of the fat, while the bile pigment has a bilirubin and biliverdin, which provides a specific color to the stool. That's it. और वो bilirubin, yes.
Ma'am, is it also responsible for creating an alkaline pH for the intestinal enzymes?
No, that is not true. It is not responsible for, but it is working into that alkaline. Yes, bile itself has an alkaline pH. That is true. वो जब हम अभी digestion करेंगे ना, Shali, when we will do the digestion chapter, we'll elaborate it, that how the stomach acidic content and it is converted into the alkaline content in the intestinal tube. We'll do that in a very elaborated form. ठीक है? Okay. यहाँ पे तो I'm simply just trying to add that blood cell का जो pigment है, that is the bilirubin, that is getting mixed with the liver or that bile pigment, and that is giving color to the specific color to the any person's stool. ठीक है, excreta undigested food particle. समझ आ गया? चलो write down. Insoluble, हाँ, liver cells change into the soluble form and then excreted into the bile, and then excreted into the bile. Full stop. इसी में कंटिन्यू करेंगे बिलीरुबिन वाले पार्ट में. In large intestine, soluble slash conjugated, soluble slash conjugated, soluble slash conjugated bilirubin, converted into styrecobilinogen, that is responsible for providing specific fecal color, that is responsible for providing specific color to the fecal matter. Acha. Now listen this. Everyone look at that. So we have covered the hemoglobin. Okay? Hemo and globin part. So what we can understood that hemoglobin, which have the two components, एक heme, that is Fe+2, and the globin. That globin is made up of the two chains because globin is a proteinaceous part. So the proteinaceous part is made up of the two type of chain, that is the alpha 2 and beta 2 helix, है ना? देखो ये है structure इसका. ये Fe का प्रोटीन, ठीक है ना? और इसमें ये कंप्लीट हेमोग्लोबिन का केमिकल स्ट्रक्चर है. केमिकल स्ट्रक्चर इन व्हाट सेंस? इन द कंप्लीट द अमाइनो एसिड के फॉर्म में. ठीक है, अगर आप उसको नॉन अमाइनो एसिड की फॉर्म में अगर सपोज दैट वी वांट टू मेक इट, सपोज दैट इफ द 10 मार्कर क्वेश्चन इज ओनली अबाउट दैट हीमोग्लोबिन, अगर ये डायग्राम नहीं आ जाए तो भी कोई बात नहीं, एटलीस्ट मेक ट्राई टू शो दिस डायग्राम. ये देखो आयरन कंटेंट दिख रहा है, दिस इज द आयरन कंटेंट और द हीम ग्रुप. सो 2 बीटा 1 बीटा 2 एंड अल्फा 2 एंड अल्फा. ठीक है, सो इसका 3D डायग्राम ये है, दैट इज योर हीमोग्लोबिन का स्ट्रक्चर. और ये आपका एक्चुअली कहां पर है? सपोज दैट दिस इज योर ब्लड वेसल्स, है ना? और उसमें क्या है? दैट इज योर आरबीसी. आरबीसी के इंटरनल का ये पार्ट है, दैट इज रेड ब्लड सेल. समझ आ गया वेयर वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट? प्रणव, गेट इट? व्हाट इज द डाउट? एन दिख रहा है एफई के साथ, विजिबल है एवरीवन? दैट एन बिकॉज ऑफ ये जो आपकी अल्फा 2 और बीटा 2 ग्लोबिन चेन बनी है, अल्फा हेलिक्स और बीटा 2 वाली, दैट इज योर अमाइनो एसिड ना. इट्स लाइक दिस. ठीक है, समझ आ गया? ये स्ट्रक्चर बनाना है, 2 चेन बना लो अल्फा 1. आई प्रोवाइड द फिजियोलॉजी के जितने भी डायग्राम नॉर्मल डायग्राम है आई प्रोवाइड इन द पीडीएफ फॉर्म. ठीक है, इतना कुछ कॉम्प्लेक्स नहीं. जहां पे बनाना होगा जैसे कि ब्लड फैक्टर कोआगुलेशन, वो आपको बनवाएंगे, अदरवाइज. चलो राइट डाउन रोल ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन, फटाफट राइट डाउन रोल ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन. फिजियोलॉजी में देवल में मल्टीपल डायग्राम्स, है ना? ऑलमोस्ट जैसे यस्टरडे आप लोगों ने जो क्वेश्चन लिखे आए उसमें भी एटलीस्ट 3 डायग्राम बना सकते हो आप. तो जितने डायग्राम आप रिप्रेजेंटेशन की तरफ बना सकते हो बनाओ. ऑलमोस्ट एवरी सिंगल डायग्राम कंटेन 0.25 मार्क्स. एक आंसर में अगर आपने 4 डायग्राम बना दिए हैं, डायग्राम शुड नॉट बी वेरी ब्यूटीफुल, डायग्राम शुड बी लाइक नॉमिनेटेड प्रॉपरली, तो 1 मार्क्स ऑलमोस्ट आपके बन गए. समझ आ रहा है? That's how you just snatch a single mark from every single question. ठीक है, सब राइट डाउन. रोल ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन. फर्स्ट ऑक्सीजन ट्रांसपोर्ट. फर्स्ट इसी में अभी हम लोग ऑक्सीजन हीमोग्लोबिन डिसोसिएशन कर्व भी कर लेंगे, दैट्स आई एम एक्सप्लेनिंग इट. रोल ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन. फर्स्ट ऑक्सीजन ट्रांसपोर्ट dash. Oxygen does not dissolve easily in the water. Oxygen does not dissolve easily in the water. Therefore, only around 1.5% of inhaled, therefore only 1.5% of inhaled oxygen is dissolved into the plasma, अच्छा एक क्वेश्चन आता है, लाइक व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन? ऑक्सीजन का जो टोटल कंटेंट है, ऑक्सीजन इज ट्रांसपोर्टेड बाय द टू फॉर्म, वन इज द प्लाज्मा and another with the respect to the binding with the hemoglobin. ठीक है? The first statement, if you remember, that oxygen is not easily dissolvable in the water, right? It will not. And अब आपको यहाँ पे याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. So what do we know? The plasma has a major, like what is the composition of the plasma, blood plasma? 90 to 95% is your. So obviously oxygen will not get dissolved with respect to the plasma. That is why 97% of the oxygen binded with that hemoglobin and Fe2 plus state and carry in the form of HbO2. है ना? Or only 3% is actually through the plasma. While when we talk about the carbon dioxide is actually transferred maximum in the bicarbonate form. ठीक है? इसी के बेसिस पे अभी we are going to relate that how the blood has a higher affinity for the carbon dioxide but the lower affinity for that oxygen. ये तो पढ़ा है ना? This is something we have read, that blood has a maximum affinity for the carbon dioxide than that oxygen. ठीक है? चलो write down. तो ऑक्सीजन को तो याद करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, that वो वाटर में डिसॉल्व नहीं सकती, तो प्लाज्मा के थ्रू वेरी लेस जाएगी. ठीक है? write down. Of inhaled oxygen is dissolved in the blood plasma, which is mostly water, and rest 97 to 98% of blood of oxygen is bind to hemoglobin in the RBCs and transport through it next point, one hemoglobin molecule, HB लिख लो आप सीधे, one hemoglobin molecules bind 4 molecule of oxygen, one per heme. Next point, binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin is an easily reversible reaction to form oxyhemoglobin, bracket में HbO2. We'll write the reaction of it. Hb plus O2 is HbO2. Next, reaction between Hb and O2 is oxygenation reaction. Full stop. Iron in ferrous state. That is Fe plus 2. Iron in ferrous state, that is Fe plus 2, binds with oxygen molecule reversibly. And in the ferric state, फेरिक स्टेट ब्रैकेट में Fe+3 Fe+3 it does not bind to oxygen. It does not bind to oxygen. Full stop. Hemoglobin exists in its two conformation. In its two conformation, that is T state or tensed state, R state or relaxed state T state में लिखो the predominant conformation of T state, the predominant प्रणव थोड़ा सा प्रेजेंटेशन रखो नोट्स बनाने में भी, ठीक है. Predominant conformation of deoxyhemoglobin and stabilized by greater number of ionic interactions. Relaxed state में लिखो oxygen binds with much higher affinity. Stabilizing the R state. Write down. Make this heading. Very bad. ये देखना यार क्या हुआ, पूरी भी नहीं भरी है इसमें, बहुत ज्यादा भर दी है. माइकल मेंटेन से क्वेश्चन याद है? माइकल मेंटेन से क्वेश्चन याद है? What it is about? Substrate binding with the enzymes and how this is speeding up the reactions, right? यही तो है ना? So what was the curve of it? कैसे बना था उसका कर्व? हाँ, नीचे कब जाएगा? Yes, it will be the constant. नीचे कहाँ जा रहा था? ठीक है, चलो राइट डाउन. देखो सिमिलरली जैसे कि एंजाइम्स के साथ सबस्ट्रेट बाइंड हो रहे थे, ऐसे ही दैट योर हीमोग्लोबिन मॉलिक्यूल एट द एल्वियोलाई, ठीक है. सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन द एल्वियोलाई? ओके, इन द एल्वियोलाई इन द लंग्स. So when suppose that this is your alveoli, okay, and this is your blood vessels. So oxygen is present over there. In the blood vessels, there are so many chotu see RBC. So oxygen from the alveoli to the RBC, this is your RBC and this is your alveoli, oxygen in that alveoli. It is simply from the higher concentration because you have just intaken the oxygen. That is why alveoli has a higher concentration, right? So oxygen from the, and remember we have talked about that anything from the higher concentration to the lower concentration can be passed, है ना, हमने उसमें बात करी थी. So oxygen from its higher concentration from the alveoli to bind with that RBC. तो ये होता तो विदाउट एनर्जी में ही है बिकॉज फ्रॉम द हायर कंसेंट्रेशन टू द लोअर कंसेंट्रेशन. एंड द डीऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड वेसल्स आपके यहाँ से राइट ऑरिकल एंड राइट वेंट्रिकल. सो यहाँ से जब आपके बॉडी का लेफ्ट ऑरिकल एंड लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, लेफ्ट ऑरिकल एंड लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, तो लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल से जब सारा कुछ अओर्टा के थ्रू बॉडी में गया एंड बॉडी से द इम्प्योर ब्लड वेसल्स इज कैरिंग थ्रू द राइट ऑरिकल to the right ventricle and right ventricle से वो कहाँ जा रहा है, lungs में, है ना, to get purified. So that means these blood vessels have the higher concentration of CO2. So which is, so that is your inhalation process which you are taking inside, and CO2 which are exchanging here at that alveoli. तो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड आपके ब्लड वेसल से कहाँ पर जा रहा है, alveoli में, and that is you are exhaling, है ना. So this binding of oxygen and carbon dioxide with the hemoglobin is a proper step process. That is your biochemistry वाला portion. Although this is a physiology, but this is going to relate with the biochemistry. ठीक है? तो जब हम उसका binding curve देखते हैं, so when we see the binding curve of that oxygen and carbon dioxide or the dissociation, it shows like this. That means initially it has the affinity that is gradually increasing. Then that is a T state and R state. So T state and R state हमने नहीं समझाया. So what I have just said that a single HB molecule can bind with the 4 oxygen molecule. So that is your T state. ठीक है, समझ आ गया. इसका मतलब थोड़ा डिटेल स्ट्रक्चर अलग से है. So जब इनिशियली एक मॉलिक्यूल बाइंड होता है, so that is this. जैसे ही दूसरा मॉलिक्यूल ऑक्सीजन का बाइंड होता है एज द सेकंड मॉलिक्यूल ऑफ ऑक्सीजन बाइंड विद द हीमोग्लोबिन, इट शोज दैट ओके नाउ द एफिनिटी विद द ऑक्सीजन एंड द हीमोग्लोबिन इज इंक्रीजिंग एट अ वेरी हाई रेट, है ना. देखो, अच्छा सपोज दैट यहाँ पे अगर मैं टाइम लिख दूं एंड यहाँ पे किसी भी चीज का रेट ऑफ चेंज लिख दूं, सो सपोज दैट 0 से, है ना, मान लो 0 1 2 3 एंड 4 5 6 एंड यहाँ पे सपोज लिख दो 5 10 15 16 15 20 25 30. तो व्हाट वी कैन सी, हाउ डू वी सी द ग्राफ, 10 तक आने में फ्रॉम 0 to 10 हाउ मच इट टुक, द 3 सेकेंड, राइट. एनीथिंग सपोज यहाँ पे डिस्टेंस है, फॉर द सेक ऑफ जस्ट कंसीडर लाइक द डिस्टेंस. सो 10 किलोमीटर डिस्टेंस कवर करने में हाउ मच टाइम इट टुक, 3 seconds. But as you are, आपको पता चल गया that this is a way which you know already. Then you increase your speed, you accelerate, right? Okay. So from in just यहाँ पे suppose that this point को consider कर ले, ठीक है? This point का time बताओ, almost 4.5. While the speed increasing, right? यहाँ पे difference आपका सिर्फ 10 है. While 10 to 35 में कितना डिफरेंस है, 25 का almost. So what it shows? It shows initially your affinity is gradually increasing, right? But after attachment of the 2 oxygen molecule with the hemoglobin, your affinity is drastically increasing with a very less minute of time. यहाँ पे 3 seconds में वो 10 kilometers cover कर रहा है, और यहाँ पे सिर्फ 1.5, 3 से 4.5, right? 1.5 में वो कितना कवर कर रहा है, 25. So what it shows कि आपकी affinity क्या हो गई है, your affinity has increased a large, ठीक है. That is the same relation. अब इसको distance की जगह remove करके suppose that hemoglobin लिख दो और यहाँ पे क्या लिख दो, the oxygen molecule, ठीक है. So initially the affinity is increasing, and as soon as this is called the T state conversion to the R state conversion. इसमें क्या है, सब लोग बाइंडेड, ठीक है. पहले एक बाइंड करता है, फिर 2, फिर 3, फिर 4, एंड आफ्टर दैट सब बाइंड होने के बाद भी क्या हो जाएगा, यस, टेंस्ड और रिलैक्स्ड, ठीक है. सब बाइंड हो गए, अब इसके बाद इसके पास सच कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है, समझ आ गया? दैट इज द ऑक्सीजन डिसोसिएशन कर्व। और ऐसे ही रिलीज में भी ऐसे ही होता है, आर स्टेट टू टी स्टेट। wherever whatever the oxygen you are intaking it, wherever it requires, you just give it to the oxygen. जैसे कि you will go that this blood vessel will go to the mitochondria. Suppose that your muscle, suppose that you are doing some kind of physical exercise, so your body requiring so much energy, and energy is forming through the mitochondria. That is because it's called the powerhouse of the cell. So whatever the organ, suppose that your liver is performing so many high function, your muscles is performing so many high function, maybe you are simply studying, तो आपकी जो नर्व वेसल्स होंगी, नर्व न्यूरॉन्स होंगे, उसकी माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया को ज्यादा एनर्जी चाहिए होगी, है ना? माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया प्रेजेंट इन ऑलमोस्ट ऑल टाइप ऑफ सेल, आपके मसल में भी है, आपके वहां पे भी है. सो दिस ऑक्सीजन विल क्विकली गोना ट्रांसपोर्ट टू दैट पर्टिकुलर सेल वेयर द एनर्जी फॉर्मेशन इज रिक्वायर्ड. So conversion of T state to R state and R state to T state in a very frequent manner, and formation of the energy. That's how we associate and that's how we dissociate. समझ आ गया? Get it? Online? Do we get it that how the affinity or the dissociation, the association works?
Yes,
As the
ma'am.
association we are talking about, similarly as a dissociation. When you are complete, suppose that, okay, in that, suppose every one of you going to give the mains examination. ठीक है, मेंस तो खैर अलग हो जाएगा. Suppose that you guys are doing some kind of work. So when you are trying to fill up, initially the motivation can be little lower, but when you are almost half of it, you get कि ठीक है, अभी तो बहुत कम रह गया, you will do that quickly. Or suppose that you are in the very stable stage, but still someone is invaded. आपके it's a closed fist. अगर एक thumb open हो जाता है, तो फिर सारी fingers open up हो जाती है. It's like that dissociation. पहला thumb release करने में भी time लगेगा, but after that every finger gonna be open. Getting my point? Pranav, did you get it or not? Online? We are going to explain it, but up till here, did we get it?
मैम
Yes.
मैम ये जो ऑक्सीजन पहले दो मॉलिक्यूल्स हैं उसमें ज्यादा ग्रेजुअली इंक्रीज करती है, उसके बाद फिर वो ले लेती है इजिली.
I didn't get your question. Repeat that again. What you're trying to say? Look, अच्छा इसमें better समझ लेते हैं. Just remove that. Remove this portion. Okay, thank you, Manisha. Navnita and Vishita, if you have any kind of doubt, bacha, ask me. Okay, देखो. What happens? This is a hemoglobin molecule. Okay, so when the first oxygen molecule will bind, suppose that यहाँ से, तो उसकी affinity, when you trying to build up something, the first step is a harder, right? The first step so much harder. That is this. But as the first step will going to stable, एक बार आप लोग प्रिम्स क्लियर कर लोगे, your motivation will be very higher to get the clear means and then the that's affinity. That's ठीक है. So when the first molecules bind with that hemoglobin molecule, there's a little less affinity compared to the second and third molecule. After binding all the four molecules, it will just simply go the constant. It will just simply go the constant. ठीक है. Similarly as a dissociation. When the first molecule you are removing, उसकी affinity उतनी ज्यादा नहीं होगी, but gradually the affinity, अभी तो एक वो देखा है ना, chemistry, everyone has just covered that 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, p state में आपके 6, अच्छा वो complicated हो जाएगा. हाँ, जब half filled और full filled state are the most stable, but अगर एक भी up और ज्यादा होती है, every 1 plus or 1 minus, then it is very destable. That's the same thing. ठीक है. हाँ हाँ, वो ट्रांजिशन, हाँ वो R state is like fully, completely bind. Write it down.
Ma'am, should we draw this diagram?
Yes, we have to, but I'll make it more beautiful. Like here, just I'm trying to explain with respect to the distance and time. I'll make that again. No worry. Okay.
Okay.
Chalo, write down. Most important factor that determine how much oxygen molecule binds to hemoglobin, how much oxygen binds with the hemoglobin is P थोड़ा नीचे लिखेंगे, small p O2. अच्छा, what does that mean? PO2 is actually the pressure of the oxygen molecule. I have just explained that the alveoli will have the higher concentration, right? Alveoli, अच्छा यहाँ पे एक बार फिर से देखने की कोशिश करो. Alveoli have the higher concentration of the oxygen molecule because you have just inhaled it. अच्छा. So normally blood wants to bind with the CO2. The CO2 get better fit. ठीक है? सब लोग बिगड़ने में टाइम नहीं लगता, like that, right? But oxygen से भी ये bind करता है. But suppose that if the blood has the 4 molecule of carbon dioxide and 4 molecule of oxygen, it will choose the CO2 first, right? But आपको यहाँ पे किससे bind कराना है? ठीक है? तो आप क्या करोगे? This is a reversible reaction. What you will do? Yes, very good. Remember, हम लोग ने एंजाइम में करा था. So this is already we have mentioned that is a reversible reaction. That means यहाँ पे blood will तो go in default with the oxygen, carbon dioxide, but blood will also the lucrative, है ना? वो आप क्या करोगे? No, I'll provide you the 6. तो बोलेगा ठीक है यार, the majority wins. Then blood have the then only blood will going to form with the HbO2. ठीक है? तो ये सिर्फ इसी कंडीशन में हो सकता है because in the alveoli because in the lungs the alveoli have the higher concentration and that is called the PO2. जिसका concentration ज्यादा होगा उसका ही pressure ज्यादा होगा. Suppose that in a balloon, if I'll filter so much oxygen, अगर मैं एक normal balloon से I'll hit you, so it will not give that much injury, right? But a full balloon if I'll hit, then it will create much more injury, like that. So the concentration is actually represented in the form of the PO2. समझ आ गया PO2 का मतलब? Which level? SpO2. नहीं मतलब SpO2 इसी को बोलेंगे, but वो fetal और उसमें अलग अलग. यहाँ पे सिर्फ PO2 बोलेंगे, ठीक है? Right on. Is PO2. The higher PO2, more oxygen binds with hemoglobin. More oxygen binds with hemoglobin. Next. When deoxyhemoglobin is completely converted into oxyhemoglobin, is said to be fully saturated. While when half of the oxygen molecules occupies the hemoglobin, it is called the partially saturated. Which is shown through oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Next point. As it is a relationship between percentage saturation of oxygen and PO2. This is sigmoidal in nature. This shows sigmoidal graph in nature. Next point. During exercise, अब ये डायग्राम बना लो. Just make this diagram. Graph. फिजियोलॉजी के लिए वैसे तो गैनोंग में प्रेफर करती हूँ, बट गैनोंग में ला नहीं सकती, तो एक पाथफाइंडर की बुक है थोड़ा बहुत, बट उसमें बहुत ही कम दिया हुआ है। इफ यू वांट आई कैन गिव यू, बट बहुत ही लेस है। जैसे कि फिजियोलॉजी में जो आपका पोर्शन है दैट इज हीमोग्लोबिन। हीमोग्लोबिन इज एक्चुअली द पार्ट ऑफ द बायोकेमिस्ट्री, तो उसके लिए अलग है। हीमोग्लोबिन अगेन कवर द सत्यनारायण। फिजियोलॉजी की कोड पढ़नी है आप लोगों में, फिजियोलॉजी ज्यादा है नहीं। फिजियोलॉजी में सिर्फ आप में डाइजेशन और एक्सक्रीशन और मसल्स कंट्रैक्शन, दैट्स इट। सो व्हेन यू आर गोइंग टू कवर द डाइजेशन, यू विल सी इट इज वेरी सिंपल। सो आई विल नॉट सजेस्ट, वैसे तो मैंने एक बुक्स अपनी बनवाने को दे दी है, द जिनको भी बुक्स नहीं मिली है एक्चुअली बिकॉज ऑफ दिस माय डिले, ठीक है, बिकॉज आई एम ट्राइंग कि आप लोगों को सीधे फॉरेन ऑथर की बुक तो इट्स वेरी हेक्टिक, तो थोड़ा सा इलाबोरेट करके, है ना, वो बुक्स आप लोगों को अब वो इशू होंगी। पेपर 2 की पहले वैसे भी कोई बुक इशू नहीं होती थी, बट आई एम ट्राइंग टू डू कि आप लोगों को कोई तो बुक्स मिल जाए, ठीक है, तो थोड़ा सा डिले हो जाएगा जो भी ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट, तो अदरवाइज द नोट्स आर सफिशिएंट। जैसे कि बायोकेमिस्ट्री व्हेन वी हैव कवर्ड इट, डू यू फील कि कोई क्वेश्चन बाहर से है? नो, बोलो ना। There's a one question. Still, I will cover that. Okay. Okay, there's one or two question, but still most of the question, like अगर आप 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, if you're solving 8 years plus IFS का भी एक दो बीच में डाला, almost 9 to 10 years के आप question are the like most of the topic नहीं 90% topic same है, almost 85 to 90% topics are exactly same, वही questions है वहाँ पे, है ना। today I'll make that group और उसमें मैं उसको update करके डालती हूँ, ठीक है। तो if you are able to solve that 10 year of questions, आपको मुझे नहीं लगता पीएचडी करने की कोई भी जरूरत है। I don't think you require to do the PhD in any unit. If you are going to write a very detailed answer more than it required, first of all it will not complete on time, and second of all it is not required. वो एग्जामिनर आपको उतने ही मार्क देगा, मैथ्स बहुत अच्छा भी लिख के आओगे तो it will give only 50%. समझ आया? No, Pranav, it's good that you have the confusion and I'll solve it. नोट्स पढ़ने में प्रॉब्लम होगी और बुक्स पढ़ना इजी रहेगा? अपने ही नोट्स पढ़ने में आपको प्रॉब्लम होगी? गुड भाई, कोई हैंडराइटिंग वाला अच्छा शेयर करो प्रणव के साथ। गुड, चलो राइट डाउन। मैं हैंड नोट्स की एक प्रिंट आउट निकलवा दूंगी, फिर चलेगा? चलो राइट डाउन। As it is relationship between the percentage saturation of oxygen, it is sigmoidal in nature, ये लिख लिया ना, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट, ड्यूरिंग द एक्सरसाइज, ये डायग्राम बना लिया। ड्यूरिंग एक्सरसाइज, as the physical work increases, the partial pressure of oxygen increases in the tissues, accompanied by H plus ion and 2,3 BPG which all promote and worked as a factor to promote the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin to release more oxygen. Next point. The quaternary structure of the hemoglobin also determines its affinity for oxygen. Next, phases, yes, steps. Phases or steps. mainly divided into two steps. Mainly divided into two steps. पेज में सब डिवाइड करके टू साइड्स में राइट डाउन स्टीप फेजेस एंड प्लेट्यू फेजेस फेज स्टीप फेज एंड प्लेट्यू फेज स्टीप फेज में लिखो it occurs at the lower oxygen concentration. It occurs at lower PO2 bracket typically below 60 mmHg. Typically below at 60 mmHg. Full stop. In actively metabolizing tissues, इसी में कंटिन्यू करना है स्टीप फेज में. In actively metabolizing tissues, hemoglobin radially unloads. Hemoglobin radially unloads the large amount of oxygen. The large amount of oxygen to meet the cellular demands. To meet the cellular demands. Platelet phase में लिखो. It occurs at higher PO2. It occurs at higher PO2. Bracket में typically between 60 to 100 mmHg. Typically between 60 to 100 mmHg. Mainly occurs in the lungs. Mainly occurs in the lungs. Full stop. It ensures that ये प्लेटियो में लिख रहे हैं ना. It ensures that hemoglobin remains nearly fully saturated even if environmental oxygen drops. Even if environmental oxygen level drops moderately. Normal point next. Normal point. यहाँ पर. Next. In deoxyhemoglobin. The globin subunits are tightly bound in a T state which reduces the affinity of the molecule for O2. Reduces the affinity of the molecule for O2. ये dissociation कर रहे हैं ना हम, ठीक है? This is not association का, this is dissociation. Full stop. When oxygen is first bound, the bonds holding the globin subunits, are released, producing R state, which exposes more oxygen binding state. Next point. The oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Oh, next point form में. प्रणव, नॉर्मल पॉइंट था ये, अब स्टीप और प्लेट्यू का नहीं था, है ना, ये नॉर्मल पॉइंट था, ठीक है. वो उसके बाद में लाइन क्लिक ऐसे खींचते. नेक्स्ट है द ऑक्सीजन हीमोग्लोबिन डिसोसिएशन कर्व, ऐसे लिखो, O2 HB dissociation curve, comma, is relating the percentage saturation of oxygen carrying power of hemoglobin to the PO2 due to its TR interconversion, interconversion. Full stop. Next point. The combination of the first heme in the HB molecule with oxygen increases the affinity of the second heme for oxygen and oxygenation of the second increases for the third. So that the affinity of HB for the fourth oxygen molecule is many times greater than for the first. फिर से लिखो इसको, इस पॉइंट को, इस इक्वेशन को फिर से राइट डाउन. HB plus O2 gives out, HB plus 4O2 gives out HbO2 4. Write down again. बस लास्ट में लिख लो. This is known as Hill equation. IFS का क्वेश्चन है सिंपल, व्हाट इज हिल इक्वेशन. So in that you are going to simply talk about the Hill equation. Introduction में it is simply related with the oxygen dissociation curve. ठीक है, थोड़ा बहुत ब्लड के बारे में लिखते हैं. And whatever we have written Hill, in that Hill equation you have simply talk about this graph, that how the first molecules binding with the first molecule of the oxygen with the HB increases the affinity of the second and the third and the fourth. The fourth has the highest affinity compared to the. यही आपका Hill equation है, यही आपको elaborate करना. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट. Binding with the second. First, तो जो first oxygen molecule है, it is simply because of the higher concentration. It will not bind, HB will not bind with the oxygen until it has a एक 4 और 6 का ratio नहीं होगा. The first, yes. Suppose that the 4-4, then it will not bind. Yes. Inhale. Chalo. Yes.
The point you said that during the exercise, as the physical work increases, the partial pressure of oxygen increases in the tissue.
Okay. Let me explain that. I know someone is going to ask. Okay. So when we do the physical activity, okay. So this will again we are going to talk about that iron H plus and आपके physiology में there's one topic that is iron balance. If you see the syllabus, this is properly mentioned. So here the iron balance means H plus and the plus ion balancing with the minus ions in your body. Okay. So when we do exercise, है ना, so what happens? So we do the respiration rate very high. ठीक है, अच्छा. So suppose that अगर मैं इस बंद, that is why the best place for that exercise is the open ground where the good oxygen will be available. Suppose that if I close this room and I'll do exercise, I'll do so many kind of exercise. My body is requiring the so much high energy because my respiration rate is increasing, but I am not getting the enough oxygen molecule. You know what amount of that is called the tidal volume? Anyone know what is the tidal volume? In the normal, suppose that during the resting position, we do inhale the 500 ml of oxygen or the air in simple. Okay, अब इस बंद करने में there is not the oxygen source. Okay, so what happens in that during that exercise state we do not have enough oxygen. If so, the first step, but we have the increased respiration rate, right, Ashali?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the first step of the respiration?
Glycolysis.
Glycolysis. What was happening at the end? We have talked about in that presence of oxygen. It is so simply forming the pyruvate, then it is converting into the PEP, and then it is entering into the Krebs cycle. Remember?
Yes, ma'am.
But your respiration rate is increases. That means glycolysis is increasing, but you are not providing that oxygen, right? So the PEP or the pyruvate will not gonna form. There's a formation of the lactic acid. That is one of the concept that is forming in the muscle. So excess of, तभी हम लोग कहते हैं acid accumulation हो जाता है. Generally in that lower old age people, है ना, bones में acid accumulation हो जाता है. That is the problem. So now in the normal state, what is happening? Your cell has a higher concentration of H plus while they require the O2. So affinity तो बढ़ती है during that exercise of that oxygen. Sorry, during the process of the exercise, because your body requires the more oxygen because oxygen is involving the ATP formation. But because of the low oxygen concentration, the H plus molecule available, and that is going to bind with that RBC. ये concept लिखा है हमने वहाँ. Get it?
Yes, ma'am.
पक्का?
Yes, ma'am.
चलो. Now write down factors affecting the binding of HbO2. Heading है ये. The binding of Hb and O2, like oxygen association or dissociation with the hemoglobin. Okay. First temperature. Right now, as the temperature increases, this curve shifts to the right. This curve shifts to the right and fall in the temperature the curve shift to the left. As a lower PO2 is required, to bind a given amount of oxygen. अभी I'll tell you last में that why the right or left shift का मतलब. ठीक है. Next, pH. रुको. इसी में लिखो temperature में. When the muscle activities increases, when the muscle activity is increased during the physical work तो बॉडी हीट करती है, राइट, बिकॉज बहुत कोई भी चीजें फंक्शन करेगी तो वो हीट करेगी, है ना, कॉमन हीट. rise in the local body temperature, results in splitting oxy-HB association to HB and O2 separately, and this oxygen reaches to the tissues, as the temperature increased dash करके लिखो, decreases the oxygen carrying capacity of lungs, समझ आया कुछ? Shriram online, did we get it? What? Shivam, what we get it? Yes, exactly. अच्छा क्यों जा रहा है ये मसल्स के पास और टिश्यू के पास? Shriram, why this breaking is favored? Like HbO2, Ishali, why HbO2 is breaking down into Hb and O2? Anjali, any one of you? Manisha. Okay. Why it is breaking down? Yes, because this oxygen is going to the tissue and tissue is your cell to produce the. आप अपनी बॉडी को रिक्वायर्ड ऑक्सीजन नहीं दे रहे हो, बट योर बॉडी तो रिक्वायर ऑक्सीजन नो मैटर व्हाट, बिकॉज यू आर डूइंग सच काइंड ऑफ फिजिकल एक्सरसाइजेस. तो बॉडी कहीं से भी ऑक्सीजन लेके आएगी नो मैटर व्हाट. तो वो क्या करेगी? एट दैट मोमेंट पे आपके ब्लड को नहीं रिक्वायर्ड है, तो व्हाट विल दे डू? आपका जो ऑक्सीजन आपके जो आरबीसी के पास, दिस इज योर आरबीसी एज अ हीमोग्लोबिन इज इन दिस फॉर्म, तो वो ब्रेक करेगी कि लिसन अभी यू डू नॉट रिक्वायर्ड, अभी वी हैव टू फोकस एवरीथिंग टू द एटीपी फॉर्मेशन. तो ये ब्रेक करके ऑक्सीजन को कहां ले जाएगी? सिंपल. नेक्स्ट, pH, effect of pH. Lowering the pH. pH को लोअर करना मतलब एसिडिटी और द बेसिसिटी? एसिडिटी. अच्छा. Lowering the pH causes oxygen affinity of the hemoglobin to decrease. And the curve shifts to the right. Full stop. This effect of pH on the oxygen affinity, on the oxygen affinity is known as Bohr effect. Next point. The molecular basis behind the Bohr effect. is that deoxyhemoglobin binds to the hydrogen ion more readily than the oxygen. Full stop. Under a low pH condition, ब्रैकेट में लिखो high hydrogen ion concentration / acidity, bracket close. The side chain of histidine of beta pleated sheet. Histidine is one of your basic amino acid. Of beta pleated sheet. कहाँ पर है beta pleated sheet? Where is this beta pleated sheet? Alpha 2, beta 2, right? So that is the beta pleated sheet. Beta pleated sheet becomes protonated and get stabilized by the forming ionic interactions. The conversion of deoxyhemoglobin to oxyhemoglobin requires the disruption of ionic interaction. Next point, effect of BPG. Third, effect of BPG. इसी condition में. When you are doing so much exercise while you're not having the good oxygen, or anytime, generally आपका anaerobic condition is increasing the H+ ion concentration because when the lactic acid is forming, so lowering the pH मतलब, so this is your oxygen dissociation curve, right? अच्छा, left shift होने का मतलब है this is a right shift and this is a left shift. ये आपका ideal है. So this is a right shift and this is a left shift. Left shift showing the higher affinity, and right shift showing the lower affinity. ठीक है? हाँ, टेम्परेचर जब बढ़ेगा तो HbO2 ब्रेक हो रहा है बाबा. What did he say again? जब बढ़ेगा तो हाँ ठीक है, जब टेम्परेचर बढ़ेगा. अब देखो इसमें क्या, अभी तक सपोज वी हैव रिटन द टू थिंग्स, है ना. सो वन वी हैव रिटन द टेम्परेचर. इसको 1 by 1 पॉइंट से देख लो. आफ्टर दैट इसमें ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. सो इफ यू आर इंक्रीजिंग द टेम्परेचर, whenever you are increasing the temperature, any kind of molecule just break down, right? Bonds will break down. Okay. So as the temperature increases, HbO2, देखना everything is relatable. HbO2 just break down into the Hb plus O2. So oxygen curve shift to the right. Okay. As the temperature decreases, the reverse action occurs. Okay. Next, talk about that pH. That means hydrogen ion concentration. Okay. अब देखना. Hydrogen ion concentration, that means if the pH is increasing, pH is decreasing, lowering the pH. If pH is decreasing, that means consider like this. This is a pH scale, 7, 14 and 1. Remember, we have talked about it. 7 से 1 जाना is your acidity, right? 7 से 14 जाना is your basicity. Just forget everything. Tell me the 14 is higher or the 1 is higher. 14 is higher, but here what we are doing, pH को decrease कर रहे हैं. That means what we are trying to do, acidity increase कर रहे हैं, ठीक है? So when the pH is decreasing, okay. So when the pH is decreasing, that means कब होगा pH आपका decrease? As Shivam has asked, when the acidic content is increasing in your body. When acidic content is increasing in your body, right? Ab now relate with this. So when you are doing physical exercises, suppose that you are doing a gym physical exercise. So your body get heated, high temperature, right? You are not providing that enough oxygen because you require so much oxygen, your respiratory rate is increasing, but you're not going to provide enough. Suppose that during that physical exercise, you require the 10 molecules of oxygen in every second, but you are only giving that 5 to 6. So that is your anaerobic condition. Anaerobic condition means the glycolysis process is forming the lactic. क्या बना रहा है? और क्या चाहिए था हमें? Right? So in that acidic condition, again HbO2, Hb now binds, do not bind with the oxygen. क्या no? Hb को तो ऑक्सीजन बिल्कुल पसंद ही नहीं है. Hb do not like oxygen at all. उसको ऑक्सीजन की जगह कुछ भी मिल जाए. जैसे बच्चे होते हैं ना, even we do not like good food. कुछ भी कचरा खाने को मिल जाए, fast food or something like that. Although we know that is not the thing we should eat, but still we do it. That is H plus ion. So during that during the formation of the lactic acid, so what happens? The beta chain of that hemoglobin, वहाँ पे histidine है. Histidine क्या है आपका? Base है. So base, obviously base हमेशा क्या होता है? OH minus. वो उसको H plus तो चाहिए ही होगा ना? Getting my point? Any kind of base, है ना? Have the OH minus group. जैसे कि acidic means H plus group and base means OH minus group. So amino acid जो आपका beta pleated sheet का amino acid है, they have the histidine. ठीक है? Beta pleated sheet में. So histidine is your basic amino acid. So जैसे ही उसको H plus मिलता है, वो कहता है कि no, ठीक है, now I'll bind with you. I do not bind with you. None of. Did we get? कहाँ तक? Alpha chain, beta pleated sheet. Listen now, this finished. Alpha chain, beta pleated sheet. यही तो आपका globin है. So beta pleated sheet का एक last amino acid है, that is your histidine. What it is? That is your histidine. There's a 3 basic amino acid: lysine, arginine and histidine. ठीक है? ये histidine के पास OH molecules है because this is your basic in nature. ठीक है? अब इसने देखा ब्लड में ये घूम रहा है. This is your globin now. What is this? This is a hemoglobin. है ना? देख लो बस यहाँ पे करना. So you are doing the physical exercises. So your body is producing the lactic acid. Lactic acid have the H plus ion. Lactic acid जब आपका बनेगा तो आपकी बॉडी में H plus ion concentration will increase. Right? As it increase, the OH will see it. Okay, I'll bind with you. I'll not bind with the oxygen. समझ आ गया? That's it. That means during that excess of physical exercises, the temperature increases. Because of the temperature increases, HbO2 break हो जाता है. HbO2 break होता है, फिर oxygen और आती है कि भाई I'm giving the oxygen. Then Hb says no, I'll not bind with you. I'll to bind with that H plus ion because my histidine requires this, not this. समझ आ गया pH का concept? OH means base. H plus means acid. Lewis acid and base concept based on this only. ठीक है? H plus means CH3COOH. H plus हमेशा. ठीक है? Sure. Next, third point, effect of, and everyone just got this concept now. Muscles के time पे. I'll not explain again. This is the ionic balance again. This will be come again and I'll ask them. तो अभी कोई doubt है तो पूछो. Otherwise I'll ask.
It's understood.
Yes, Navneeta. Do you have any doubt, bacha? Yes, no. Okay, thank you. Chalo. Effect of BPG. Effect of BPG. ये डायग्राम बनाना है ना जहां पे हमने फैक्टर्स लिखने शुरू करे हैं ना. You have to make this diagram. ठीक है, लोअर एफिनिटी एंड हायर एफिनिटी, ठीक है। अभी लिख लो फिर एक साथ बना लेना। वैसे जब आप लोग एचबी का ये क्वेश्चन मल्टीपल टाइम्स पूछा गया, यू विल सी दैट पीवाईक्यू में विल शो दैट, ठीक है। सपोज 2 पॉइंट लिख लिया या 1 पॉइंट लिख लिया, जस्ट मेक दिस डायग्राम। हाँ, जब 14 OH की तरफ जाएगा तो उधर हो जाएगा, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट, इफेक्ट ऑफ बीपीजी। टेम्परेचर इंक्रीजेस दिस साइड, टेम्परेचर डिक्रीजेस दिस साइड, ठीक है। pH इंक्रीजेस दिस साइड, pH डिक्रीजेस दिस साइड। मतलब एक साइड का याद रखो, दूसरा साइड वाइस वर्सा है। इफेक्ट ऑफ बीपीजी। The BPG is present in the RBC of human beings, RBC of human beings, and also other species, BPG का फुल फॉर्म तो पता है ना, बाइफॉस्फो ग्लिसरेट, है ना, ग्लाइकोलाइसिस। अगर नहीं पता है तो यू गाइस कैन आस्क मी। 2,3 BPG इज अ बाइफॉस्फो ग्लिसरेट। देखो ये कॉन्सेप्ट कहां से कनेक्ट कर रहा है। Now did we get it? That each step of the glycolysis is somehow connected with so many other than metabolic activities. Similarly, the Krebs cycle will be like that. ठीक है, बीपीजी का फुल फॉर्म है 2, 3 बाइफॉस्फोग्लिसरेट, ठीक है। ये this is one of the step, this is one of the intermediate step compound in that glycolysis process, ठीक है। चलो, it is a highly charged anion. Anjali, anion has a plus charge or the negative, positive or the negative charge?
मैम अनायन का नेगेटिव।
ठीक है, तो नेगेटिव है तो किसको अट्रैक्ट करेगा, रिलेट हो
मैम
गया,
पॉजिटिव।
राइट, वेरी गुड। सो anion is your negative charged, so BPG has a negative charge. Listen everyone and answer me. Now this is your question, online you too. So BPG is a anion, ठीक है, okay. So it will bind with the H plus ion. H plus ion is forming in that physical exercise condition because of the H plus acid, है ना? So now you guys tell me, if you increase the BPG concentration in your blood, this curve, this binding of curve, shift left or the right?
It will shift left, ma'am. The oxygen affinity will increase.
Sorry. Shali, left or right?
Not left.
Oxygen affinity increases.
Yes, yes.
Shriram, Pranav. Online, Vishta, Navneeta, Rohit, Manisha, Anjali, everyone, just answer me. Comment down there. Anjali. Shriram. Right? Pranav. Shivam. Navneeta saying right. Question repeat कर दूं? Okay. Simply, that is 2,3 biphosphoglycerate, that is an anion. If it is present, ठीक है, because it is anion, so it will bind with cation. So cation is your H plus. Okay. बस यही क्वेश्चन है. So if it will present, the oxygen curve shift left or the right? चलो, write down. In deoxygenated state, it is a highly charged anion. It is a high. Rohit, answer me, beta. They're not answering. It is a highly charged anion. Full stop. in deoxygenated state, hemoglobin binds the one molecule of BPG, in the central cavity, and form the salt bridge, and therefore reduces the oxygen affinity for hemoglobin. तो जिन्होंने भी राइट बोला था उनका आंसर राइट है, राइट? Obviously, when I'm saying directly that this is a compound which will promote to the binding of H+, that means the physical exercises में we are producing the H+. That is one of the compound. When you go to the hilly areas, you become reddish, right? वहाँ पे oxygen concentration generally decrease हो जाता है. So as you go up, एक 6 to 7 kilometers from the surface, max to max gases रहती है. After that क्या होता है? Oxygen concentration और most of the gases concentration is decreases. So as you go up, the oxygen is not binding with you, है ही नहीं, आपको मिल ही नहीं रही है, बहुत हाई पर, ठीक है? तो आपकी जो हीमोग्लोबिन है वो अपने नंबर इंक्रीज करने लगती है और यू बिकम रेडिश, ठीक है? और उस समय आपके साथ ये बाइंड कर, ठीक है? तो राइट वाला आंसर सबका सही. रिड्यूस कर रहा है भाई एफिनिटी. जब H+ से बाइंड करेगा, इफ समवन इज बाइंडिंग विद द H+, जैसे कि pH वाला, then how it will bind with the oxygen? Getting my point, Shivam? चलो, reduces the oxygen affinity for hemoglobin. Full stop. An increase in the concentration of BPG, shifts the reaction slash graph to the right, causing more dissociation or liberation of oxygen molecule with from hemoglobin, from HbO2. Next point, at the higher altitude, where the oxygen concentration is lower, the BPG substantially rise, as the production increases in our red cells, to the red cells, and make sure the availability of oxygen to the tissues. एनर्जी चाहिए ना, ऑक्सीजन मिले चाहे ना मिले, एनर्जी तो चाहिए बॉडी को, राइट? लास्ट पॉइंट, इफेक्ट ऑफ PCO2. समझ आ गया? पक्का? चलो, जैसे आप हिली एरियाज में जाते हो, आपकी रेड ब्लड सेल्स स्टार्ट फॉर्मिंग दिस BPG, so that oxygen will not only bind with the hemoglobin but available to the tissues. Why the tissues? To form the ATP, energy cycle. Tissues मतलब cells, ठीक है? Last point, इफेक्ट ऑफ PCO2. ये तो लिख लोगे अपने आप से, हो जाएगा ना? अभी तो बताया CO2 has a more affinity than the O2, then curve shift to the right, है ना? जब भी ऑक्सीजन ब्रेक हो रही है तो शायद राइट ही शिफ्ट होगा. ये राइट इज नॉट राइट, ठीक है? चलो, if the 4 molecules of the oxygen and 4 molecules of CO2, the HB is going to bind with the CO2. That means curve shift to the, because right shifting means lower affinity. ठीक है, simple. चलो, write on. Carbon dioxide binds to the hemoglobin. Carbon dioxide binds to the hemoglobin and forms carb amino hemoglobin and forms carb. लिख लोगे ना, कार्ब अमीनो hemoglobin. कार्ब अमीनो हीमोग्लोबिन. बायोलॉजी वाले नाम से कब से डरने लग गए? हाँ, चलो राइट डाउन. It combines with the amino groups. It combines with the amino groups of N-terminal amino acid. Of N-terminal amino acid of both alpha and beta chains. Of both alpha and beta chains. In the higher PCO2, hemoglobin has a more affinity with CO2. Hemoglobin has more affinity with CO2. So this graph shifts to the. किधर शिफ्ट होगा? राइट साइड. ग्राफ बना दिया आप लोगों ने? प्लीज मेक दैट क्विकली. सपोज दैट अगर 10 मार्कर में बोहर इफेक्ट आया तो यू गाइस कैन राइट डाउन व्हाट इज द बोहर इफेक्ट. बोहर इफेक्ट इज सिंपली द ऑक्सीजन डिसोसिएशन कर्व. अगर बोहर इफेक्ट आ रहा है तो आपको एक्चुअली पता है क्या लिखना है. इन द बोहर इफेक्ट यू हैव सिंपली गोइंग टू राइट दैट इन व्हाट कंडीशन. आपको डायग्राम बनाना है. इन व्हाट कंडीशन द कर्व इज शिफ्टिंग टू द राइट और द लेफ्ट, दैट इज द बोहर. ठीक है. इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ, देखो पीएच तो हमने बताया ही है. So, see there, हमने pH इफेक्ट में बोहर लिखा है. प्रणव, pH इफेक्ट में बोहर लिखा है. सेकंड वाला पॉइंट देखो, है ना, अंडरलाइन दैट. ठीक है. अब pH इफेक्ट कब हो रहा है? ड्यूरिंग द फिजिकल एक्सरसाइजेस व्हेन द H+N concentration increases. तो ये तो आप इलाबोरेट कर रहे हो. यू इलाबोरेट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द pH. Then as you're performing the muscles, the temperature will gonna relate with that. Because of that I explained in that relatable manner. Okay. And the temperature and अगर तो pH और temperature तो relate हो ही पाए. ठीक है. And second, when you are forming BPG अगर नहीं relate कर पा रहे हो तो मत करो. ठीक है. So when you are forming the CO2, suppose that lactic acid का formula I do not remember exactly अभी. Suppose that in the acidic condition is actually the CO2 concentration is also increases. So that means Bohr effect shows that oxygen will have the lower affinity with the hemoglobin. So whatever the factor you can mention, just mention it over there. And providing the free oxygen molecule to the cell to form the to form the ATP ना, टिश्यू के पास क्यों जा रहा है? Why your body is performing this reaction? उसका मन है बस ऐसे नहीं. Your body is managing so many things by itself. अगर वो हीमोग्लोबिन और ऑक्सीजन, if your body is breaking down the HbO2, वो ऑक्सीजन अपने पास स्टोर नहीं कर रहा है, because at that time your body is requiring the oxygen not with the Hb but with the ATP. ठीक है, वो तुरंत जाके ATP को दे रहा है. That's why. pH से रिलेट करो, रिलेट विद द टेम्परेचर. हाँ, फिर उसके बाद CO2 से रिलेट करो. इसी को बना के जो शो कर, इसको आपको बोहर इफेक्ट में दिखाना है. तो यहाँ पे क्या लिखोगे? राइट शिफ्ट इन द कंडीशन ऑफ लोअर पीएच, है ना, हायर H+ कंसेंट्रेशन या एसिडिक एनवायरनमेंट. ये इलाबोरेटेड फॉर्म हो गया, एसिडिक एनवायरनमेंट. टेम्परेचर, राइज इन टेम्परेचर या सिंपल राइट डाउन, टेम्परेचर इंक्रीजेस एंड CO2 concentration या PCO2 increases. बस ये बोर इफेक्ट है. Even if you are writing about that factors, इसी का ऑपोजिट यहाँ लिख दो, डायग्राम खत्म. ठीक है, सिंपल. चलो, now make the heading transport of CO2. O2 समझ आ गया? Is there any doubt with the transportation of the O2 with the hemoglobin? चलो, online any doubt in the oxygen hemoglobin binding?
मैम जो आपने ग्राफ बनाया था ना कर्व वाला, प्लीज एक बार समझा दो.
This one or before that one?
इससे पहले वाला.
अंजलि, जब मैं पूछूंगी तभी आप बताओगे. देखो, so this is the oxygen concentration, that is the PO2. PO2 means oxygen concentration, suppose that 0, 5, 10, 15 and so on. So oxygen concentration increases on the x-axis. ठीक है, and it shows the percentage saturation of oxygen with the hemoglobin, that is on your y-axis. ठीक है, so actually when the oxygen molecules bind with the hemoglobin, एक hemoglobin is made up of alpha, alpha 2, beta and beta 2. So in that one hemoglobin, the 4 molecules of oxygen will be binding. So there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3 and there's a 4. ठीक है अंजलि?
Yes ma'am.
Okay. So this is the your T state and R state. It's not like that all of the 4 molecules just go and bind simultaneously. The binding of Hb with the oxygen molecule is increases one by one. Forget about the T and R state. So initially what is happening, initially even in the association or the dissociation in both of the things, okay, it is gradually increasing. Okay, so initially में there is suppose that 5, 10, 15, 40 है ना, यहाँ पे एक बाइंड हुआ, यहाँ पे 2, तो suppose that यहाँ तक तो बहुत टाइम लग रहा है. So when the first oxygen molecule is going to bind with the oxygen, it will take suppose that 5 minutes of time. ठीक है, अभी यहाँ पे एक molecule of oxygen is bind होता है. So when the one molecule, suppose that if you want to go somewhere, है ना, आप वहाँ पे गए, suppose लबसना में गए, you do not know that any one of this batch is person is selected or not, but maybe now as soon as you are going to the Labasna or any kind of place, as if you see your one of the friend is already there, your motivation will increase.
Yes ma'am.
So that is the second higher affinity of that oxygen. The second oxygen is binding with a more quickly compare. Suppose that second oxygen is bind ho raha hai, it will take maybe the 4 minutes or maybe the 3.5 minutes only. Getting my point?
Yes ma'am.
So that is steep increase even in the association or in the dissociation too. The third molecule when bind with the oxygen, it will take maybe only the 2 minutes. Okay?
Yes ma'am.
Because you went and you see, okay, you have already 2 friends over there. And the fourth molecule, okay, only I'll be waiting for that. Everyone is waiting for me only. Let me bind the Kuti. The fourth oxygen molecule and bind in the 0.5 minutes. Getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
That it shows a gradual progression. Still, if you are increasing the concentration of the oxygen molecule, the HB molecule is already saturated. That is called the saturation. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
As
Ma'am,
of
it means
let-
मतलब
let-
कि सिर्फ फर्स्ट मॉलिक्यूल को ही ज्यादा टाइम लगता है, जैसे पहला मॉलिक्यूल अटैच हो जाता है, बाकी इजीली अटैच हो जाते हैं.
yes, yes. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Similar process with the dissociation too. If one molecule, suppose that all of you are going here, you do not like the place, so you will gonna,
Dissociate.
yes, you will going to dissociate. So now the state is like this. So everyone saying, oh, one of your friend has went. Chalo, you also leave. You also leave. You also. Getting my point?
Yes, ma'am. मतलब कि डिसोसिएशन में भी फर्स्ट मॉलिक्यूल की
हाँ.
को ज्यादा टाइम लगेगा, बाकी इजीली
Yes.
हो जाएगी.
Yes.
एंड मैम PO2 में P जो है वो कंसंट्रेशन है या प्रेशर है?
बच्चा वो प्रेशर है. That is the pressure. But pressure is how to relating with the concentration. Concentration means simply the number of, like how many people you are, how much you are concentrated. जैसे कि in that alveoli, so much oxygen, maybe the 15 molecule of oxygen. So that means 15 molecule of oxygen will create the more pressure. That is called the PO2. Okay? If there will be the 10 oxygen molecule in one of that alveoli, then it will be the PO2 will be lesser. So यहाँ पे suppose that A लिख दे, यहाँ पे B लिख दे. So PO2 of A is much more higher than PO2 B because of its
हायर प्रेशर.
higher concentration of the oxygen molecule.
सॉरी.
Got it?
यस मैम. मैम एक रेड ब्लड सेल में कितना हेमोग्लोबिन होगा?
One RBC में लिखा तो है 280 around.
280 ग्राम.
Numbers.
नंबर्स.
ऐसे तो 654 कितना लिखा था 65,480
मॉलिक्यूल्स.
डाल्टन.
डन.
वन हीमोग्लोबिन का वेट इतना होता है.
ओके.
ठीक है. बट एक आरबीसी में अराउंड 280 लगा है ना. 280 आपके नंबर्स ऑफ हीमोग्लोबिन मॉलिक्यूल. हीमोग्लोबिन बच्चा मॉलिक्यूल है ना. व्हाई यू कंफ्यूज्ड? हीमोग्लोबिन एक मॉलिक्यूल है. अंजलि, दिस इज अ हीमोग्लोबिन मॉलिक्यूल. दिस इज अ 1, दिस इज 2, दिस इज.
यस मैम. मैम आपने कल बताया था ना कि जो हेम है वो आयरन से, Fe से. तो मैम ये हेम ग्रुप क्या है?
हीम ग्रुप है यार, उसका नाम दिया गया है. साइंटिफिक नेम, जैसे कि यू नो दैट द साइंटिफिक नेम ऑफ दैट गोल्ड.
नेम ऑफ
गोल्ड.
गोल्ड.
ऑरा.
और यार सिंबल पता है, AU होता है इसका.
यस, बिकॉज ऑफ दिस.
और
So that is your chemistry का question in your GS paper. What are that iron को जो mining करते हैं, it is coming in the form of hematite, magnetite, right? In the form of their ores, है ना? That is called the ores. Ores क्या होते हैं? Suppose that if you are mining the iron की there are so many mines ना, Jharkhand, Jagargura and so many areas. So when the mining process occurs, this is not contained in the form of this. It is containing in the form of, there's a two mainly form of ores. Ores क्या होते हैं? Ores are that iron plus the impurity, some amount of impurity. ठीक है? So उसका नाम होता है hematite. What is hematite? Fe3O4. And that's the magnetite. I think I have reversed something. दो होते हैं, Fe2O3 and Fe3O4. तो हेमेटाइट हैज अ मैक्सिमम कंसंट्रेशन. यहां से आपका हीम वर्ड आ रहा है. अभी ठीक है?
ओके मैम.
चलो. ट्रांसपोर्ट ऑफ CO2. CO2 is formed in the body as a result of the various metabolic activities. Carbon dioxide formed in the body. Carbon dioxide is formed in the body as a result of the various metabolic activities on different cells and tissues, in different cells and tissues, and diffuses in different cells and tissues and diffuses into the blood in respective organs. Next point. CO2 concentration is higher. CO2 concentration is higher in the venous blood / veins. ये तो सबको, every one of you know ना that the difference between the arteries and the veins. Online, ये
Yes,
सबको
ma'am.
पता है ना, arteries and veins. All
Yes,
the okay, good. So tell me this statement. True, false? Online.
Ma'am, all the arteries carry, but except one, that is pulmonary artery, that carries the deoxygenated blood from heart to lungs.
All, eliminate that. Exactly what you have said, exactly that is the point. So that is why this statement is wrong. Not all. Simple अगर लिखा होता है, the arteries carry the pure blood. That's true. ठीक है?
Yes, ma'am.
Veins का question है. चलो, right on. The venous blood or the veins, which like जो हम लोग अगर अपने hand पे देखें तो bluish color जो दिख रहा है वो आपकी veins है. ठीक है, दिख रहा है? हाँ, that bluish or greenish impure blood. ठीक है? चलो, right on. It's around 80 ml to 100 ml of blood. Is around 80 ml to 100 ml of blood. While in arterial blood, its concentration is 45 to 50 ml per 100 ml of blood. In per 100 ml of blood. Veins में कितना होता है? Veins में होता है 80 ml. 80 ml in 100 ml of blood. ठीक है? और arteries में कितना होता है? 45 to almost half. इसमें 80% हो रहा है, इसमें almost 45 to 50 half percent हो रहा है. चलो, right on. Next, CO2 is transported in three forms. CO2 is transported in three forms. First, transport as a carbonic acid. Transport as a carbonic acid. Slash ion. Next, लिखो. From body tissues. नहीं, इसमें लिखना है. This is a subheading. From body tissues. As carbon dioxide enters in the blood, the carbon dioxide enters in the blood, it reacts with water molecule write down like this. It reacts with water molecule in the plasma and form carbonic acid. Or H2CO3 ये स्ट्रक्चर है. ठीक है, एक H को रिमूव कर दोगे तो H माइनस हो जाएगा. ठीक है, ये बन कैसे रहा है? CO2 आपकी बॉडी की टिश्यूज ने प्रोड्यूस करा और हर जगह वाटर इज अवेलेबल एवरीवेयर, तो CO2 plus H2O gives out H2CO3 और H अगर रिएक्टिव फॉर्म में CO3 माइनस प्लस H, ठीक है, राइट डाउन। Next point. Around 9 to 10% of total CO2. Around 9 to 10% of total CO2 dissolved in the blood. Dissolved in the blood and carried as a form of carbonic acid. And carried as a form of carbonic acid. In the carbonic acid or bicarbonate ions, in the carbonic acid or bicarbonate ion, the greatest percentage of carbon dioxide transported, the greatest percentage देखो यहाँ पे एक्चुअली टू थिंग्स वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, ठीक है, देखो आप लोग कंफ्यूज हो गया, आई नो दैट, तो यहाँ पे देयर इज अ ब्लड, ठीक है, सो ब्लड एंड सेल्स, सो अगर ये प्लाज्मा से बाइंड हो रही है, इफ द CO2 इज बाइंडिंग विद द प्लाज्मा, वहां पे भी ये वाटर के साथ ही फॉर्म हो बाइंड हो रही है, तो दैट इज 7%, बट अगर सेल के साथ ये बाइंड हो रही है नॉर्मल वाटर में, तो वो आपका बाइकार्बोनेट आयन के फॉर्म में वो आपका 70%। सेल का जो होता है, जो when the CO2 is binding with the blood plasma, that is only 7%. Here the bicarbonate ion is not binding, not forming, ठीक है, here in the normal presence of that water, यहाँ पे 70%, right on, you get it, right on, around 70% as a bicarbonate ion, as greater percentage of carbon dioxide, that is around 70%, that is around 70%, as full stop, as carbon dioxide diffuses into systematic capillaries, into systematic capillaries, यहाँ पे ये डिसॉल्व हो जाती है, यहाँ पे ये बाइकार्बोनेट आयन नहीं बनाती, ठीक है, यहाँ पे बनाती है, दैट इज योर लाइन, राइट ऑन, एज द कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड डिफ्यूजेस इनटू द सिस्टमैटिक कैपिलरीज एंड एंटर्स इनटू आरबीसी, वहां पे भी तो वाटर है, राइट, एंड एंटर्स इनटू आरबीसी, it reacts with water, it reacts with water in the presence of enzyme, in the presence of enzyme, carbonic anhydrase, carbonic anhydrase to form carbonic acid, full stop, a comma, which dissociate into H plus and HCO3 minus, H plus and HCO3 minus. So what will happen, guys? Listen, last point here. So now the PCO2 concentration is higher. Okay, everyone just see it, look at here. When the PCO2 concentration is higher, it will bind with the water and forming the H2CO3. Okay, abhi dekho, and here it will break down into H plus and HCO3 minus, just because of the presence of the CO2, right? And when we were talking about that shifting of curve, so in what condition the curve was shifting to the right? In that higher H plus concentration or the lower? देखो, So excess of PCO2 produces the excess of H plus, and this H plus is inhibiting the binding of oxygen with the connected. Pranav, Shriram, H plus अभी लिखा था ना हमने वहां पे lower pH. That was separate point because of your muscle activity and so on and so on. And यहाँ पे वही H plus produce हो रहा है. अरे बाबा, PCO2 means क्या है? First of all, do not get confused. PCO2 means excess of CO2. So CO2 is binding with the water content in your blood, right? You didn't do anything. You just simply go in some kind of mining areas. वहाँ पे CO2 is producing very much. Suppose at very polluted areas. ठीक है? So you are inhaling the CO2. ऐसे consider कर लो. ठीक है? Because the oxygen is not available. So you are inhaling the CO2. So CO2 is getting binded with the H2O. आपके blood में water present है normally, right? So it is binding with the water and forming the carbonic acid. And carbonic acid itself break down into H plus and CO3 minus. It required the condition. It was a specific condition. It actually break down itself also. It required for the maintenance of the ionic balance. Just simple. अभी यहाँ पे समझो breakdown. So after the breakdown, it is producing the, or H plus यहाँ पे in this factor was inhibiting the binding of oxygen with the, कर रहा था ना, right? This is one of them because of the CO2. अभी connected? किधर? But concept समझ आया? ठीक है? Last point लिखो. Some bicarbonate ions moves out in the blood plasma. Some bicarbonate ions moves out into the blood plasma down its concentration gradient, down its concentration gradient full stop. In exchange, chloride ions move from plasma into the RBC. Chloride ion moves from plasma into the RBC, which maintains the electrical balance, and known as chloride shift और बोहर इफेक्ट. अभी समझ आया? अभी समझ आया? बोहर हमने लिखा था वहां पे पीएच आयन, पीएच और H प्लस कंसेंट्रेशन. ठीक है, चलो रेस्ट फिर डू इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास. सेकेंड लिख लो, लिख लो, इसको खत्म करो. सेकेंड पॉइंट लिखो, डिसॉल्व इनटू कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड. तो पहले बाइकार्बोनेट आयन के फॉर्म में, दैट इज 70%, राइट. सेकेंड लिखो, डिसॉल्व इनटू कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, डिसॉल्व कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, डैश करके लिखो. The smallest percentage around 7%, dissolve in the blood plasma and transport, third carb amino compound, that we'll do in the next class. ठीक है, देखो ultimately the conclusion is this, कि in whatever the condition, if your body has increasing the H plus ion concentration, your oxygen will not bind with that hemoglobin. Acidic content नहीं अच्छा है आपकी body के लिए. ठीक है, so acidic content, H plus ion condition will increase in so many different conditions. First, the formation of lactic acid because of the higher muscle activity. Second, if you are inhaling the tumor too much CO2. CO2 will bind with the H2 and it will break down into H plus N. Ultimately H plus N concentration again increasing and the O2 will again cannot bind. CO2 is why it is binding with the water. अलाउ नहीं कर रहा ना उतना, डायरेक्ट हीमोग्लोबिन अलाउ नहीं कर रहा, वो कार्बामिनो फॉर्म के पे हम लोग लिखेंगे. So carbon dioxide is transported into 3 different ways. जैसे कि वहां पे 2 different था ना, there's one in HbO2 and second is plasma. Oxygen is transporting by 2 methods. Carbon dioxide is transporting through 3 methods. One is a plasma, second one is a bicarbonate and third one is a carb amino acid. वो होगा उससे भाई. नहीं अलाउ करती, मन नहीं उसका. ठीक, चलो. Thank you very much. Yes, Shali, ask me.
Ma'am, I was saying that why doesn't the BPG bind with the H plus ions that is produced during the lactate formation?
I didn't get it.
Ma'am, can the BPG bind with the H plus ions during the anaerobic cellular respiration?
देखो बच्चा, BPG is forming by the RBC. It is a kind of coping mechanism of your body. If you go to the hilly areas, then your RBC start producing the BPG intentionally, so that because वहाँ पे क्या है, देखो, it's a very simple thing. वहाँ पे क्या है, आपको ऑक्सीजन नहीं है. As you go to the hilly areas, वहाँ पे ऑक्सीजन नहीं है. अब ऑक्सीजन नहीं है तो जितनी भी ऑक्सीजन है, actually what is the important function, the oxygen in your body? The most important function of the oxygen in your body is the formation of
cellular respiration.
Yes. So HB के साथ if O2 is binding, this is not the major function. So यहाँ पे क्या होता है, as you go to the hilly areas, so यहाँ पे your RBC start producing the BPG, जानबूझ के प्रोड्यूस करती है. तो RBC कहती है कि ये दोनों ऐसे नहीं छूटेंगे, ऐसे करो, H plus and concentration लेके आओ. कैसे लेके आओ? with the formation of BPG. ठीक है. तो जैसे HbO2 H plus को देखता है, ये इसको रिमूव कर देता है, कहता नो वायल तो बाइंड विद द H plus आयन, जस्ट गो, और ये वाला टारगेट इसका कंप्लीट हो जाता है कि ठीक है, ये तो चाहिए था.
ओके मैम. एंड मैम मुझे ना वो नहीं मिला द क्वेश्चन.
I hope everyone is mature enough so that we can form a group. हम कर सकते हैं ये, है ना. आज तो लाइव है ये, तो नंबर थोड़ा वैसे जाएगा. तो कल की क्लास में अपन क्या करेंगे, I'll not do the live and I'll make a group so that वहां पे मैं PDF शेयर करूंगी because everyone like wants that kind of PDF. चलेगा शाली?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, can I give the number somewhere else? Then I have college to go, so I might have.
Yes. You guys can do this also so that I'll form. इस वाली मेल पे आप लोग कोई भी अपना नंबर दे सकते हो. Send every one of your number. अरे यार. Every one of you, please give this number. Please give your numbers so that I'll with your name, please, है ना. So I'll form a common group of yours. ठीक है. So whatever excess information I'll have, I'll just post on that group. चलेगा?
Okay, ma'am.
Whoever is comfortable, whoever wants. It's not a forced thing. It's just आपकी अपनी श्रद्धा अनुसार. चलो ठीक.